Hey, I have been working on something recently with competitor targeting, and I made a post about it like, I don't know, months ago, um, about how to do better, I think specifically like display targeting. That has kind of evolved into better competitor targeting overall. And I've been testing it out for quite a while because competitor targeting is pretty useful, but it can be pretty unprofitable. It just kind of depends on how you do it, I've noticed. Um, and I'm going to show you a way that I've been doing it that I think is very helpful. You may or may not know that this is the way to do it or how to do it, but I have found this to be the simplest and then most efficient in terms of performance way to go about competitor targeting. So I'm going to show you how I do that kind of in real time. So I'm going to hopefully go through it fairly quickly, but we'll see. So first things first is I use Helium 10. If you don't use Helium 10 and you have a similar software, I recommend doing it this way. It's a little bit longer. You can do it faster, but I like to do it this way so I can actually prioritize the competitors that matter, because the way that we're doing this is with category targeting in both sponsored products and sponsored display. And if you could, the way to think about that is if you are competitor targeting using those that style of targeting, like product targeting, rather than targeting like keywords, you're allowing the competitor to pay for the traffic to the display page or their product detail page, right? So they're actually incurring some of the cost to generate traffic for you. And so that's why I kind of like it, because it is a little bit less, depending on how aggressive they're being with defense, obviously, but it can be a little bit less expensive to do it this way. And honestly, I have found it to be actually convert better than doing kind of direct competition on the competitor keywords. I'm not saying don't use competitor keywords. I just think that this style of doing it, for me, has yielded the best results, or at least better results, than trying to aggressively compete with a competitor on their branded terms. So that's sort of the idea behind it, is you're letting them sort of pay for the traffic part way to get to your products. So like I said, I use Helium 10. If you have another software, you can do a similar thing. I like to do this because I have it, and like I said, it helps me prioritize the the most important competitors. And then so we'll just jump into it. Obviously, you need to go to tools if you're in Helium 10, and then use black box product research. And in this case, I'm going to be looking for competitors in Packing Cube, which is a humongously competitive category. I don't recommend it if you're going to start a new product or brand, just because it is hugely competitive and it is almost entirely dominated by Chinese sellers. But if you're in there already, you can basically copy paste this strategy if you want. But just use this as more of like a template for your own products and thinking through how to do competitor targeting on your own. So firstly, we want to look for packing cubes. And the way that I tend to do this is packing comma cube. So it's going to look for those words in the title. You can do like really descriptive terms, but I prefer to kind of separate out single terms. Something else to be aware of is that if you do it like this, if somebody has in their title packing cubes instead of packing cube, you will have to search both the singular and the plural form of that search term to sort of get the most reach in this data pull. And also, I have not found this data pull to yield all the data, and sometimes it's not that accurate, but it does a pretty good job. So that's that's one thing to keep in mind when you're using these tools, is they're not actually perfect, but they're pretty good. So anyway, we'll just start with packing cubes and hit search. Okay, and then I like to sort by monthly revenue. And you can see kind of all the packing cubes that are showing up. And what I do is I usually scroll through here and just make sure that nobody strange is showing up, or a strange products or something like that. And I do know that for this product specifically, that I actually want to avoid compression cubes. So I am going to type into the excluded words compression, if I could spell it right. And then there's no real other qualities that I'm trying to exclude. I do see a duffel bag in there, so maybe I will exclude duffel. And so that'll be a good start. And then you apply filters, once you've excluded a couple of words. And okay, now we're left with a little bit more similar style product. And again, just want to scroll through and make sure nothing in here is like really a weird product that you don't want to advertise on, because ideally what you'd be able to narrow it down to are sort of the brands that are most similar to your brand, and we're not worried about price or anything like that. We're just trying to narrow down brands and products. So okay, yeah, so they spelled duffel differently. I'm going to go ahead and add the other spelling of duffel. And apply filters again. And this will just, like I said, this just kind of cleans up this initial data pull. And then resort. Okay. There we go. Now we've got all these bags that we're looking for, and then we want to export that data into a CSV. And as soon as it is finished downloading, there we go, we want to open that file. All right, so here you go. This is the data pull, and what we want to do is we want to use pivot table. So we just go to insert pivot table, and I always do pivot tables in new worksheets. And then we're looking for, first, put your brand here in the rows. So you can see not that many brands got pulled. And then we want to do monthly sales. I always like to sort by sales. Sort largest to smallest. Okay, so obviously these guys are super dominant. Everybody else, not so much. And then the next thing I like to do is actually go ahead and use the subcategory, because sometimes, like you can see here, this isn't the case so much with these packing cubes, but what you'll see is that people use different subcategories to sort of rank better, right? They want to try to get bestseller in a smaller category, but they're still a product like yours. So that's why I like to sort out subcategories, so that way I can see if there are any brands in different categories, so I know to search that category to add that brand. So what I'm going to do now is actually I'm going to move this to a different tab, but you kind of get the idea. This is what I'm looking for, okay? And then we're going to go into the campaign and start adding products, okay? So this is the main category that basically all the brands are in. So instead of going after this category broadly, I prefer to do it this way because I've just noticed that this way tends to generate a higher return than just going broadly on a category. So that's why we do it. Now, I also, instead of using suggested bid for this kind of stuff, because this will show up a lot on product pages, and product pages tend to be very low conversion, and so suggested bids are usually way inaccurate. So I usually just custom bid, and what I'll do for this is just set it to 1 for now. It probably should be more like 1 or 2, but you'll know your category best. So if you have a product where product page placements only cost 50 cents or something like that, don't overshoot it, is what I'm getting at. Is you want to be pretty conservative with these bids, especially starting off. So then we'll just start refining the category. And so the first one is obviously these guys. They're in that group. Let's see. This is in the group. And that's in there. Now it just becomes a matter of typing in all your competitors. So TravelWise. Okay. Let's see. HOT, these guys. Here we are. And I'm just going to go through and add these competitors because these are the guys that are generating the most sales, which means they're probably also generating the most traffic. And what we're trying to do is sort of let them pay for the expensive top of search traffic and try to sort of squeak out any sales we can off their back, essentially, and hopefully fairly cheaply, but namely because especially in a competitive category like this, like people are not as committed to brand. So you're just trying to, it's kind of a numbers game essentially in a category where nobody cares about brand. In some categories, people care about brands much more than other categories, but this one is definitely not the case. So we're just trying to avoid paying, $2 or $3 for top of search clicks, let them do that, then try to, get as many sales and impressions from their listings as we can. Let's see. So we just did there. We need to do. Okay. So we found. Never mind. Sometimes you will notice that brands that you put in here that you get in your data pool are not in here. And usually that's because they might not have like brand registry or something, or the category that it has in the data pool is just inaccurate. Something's funky there. In those cases, I'll show you what to do. So far we haven't had. Okay. Well, now we have. So we'll deal with that in a second. And we want Eagle Creek. And believe it or not, we have Wrangler. Okay. So now we've selected all these brands, okay, and we want to add those. But what we had this brand, Epic Totes. They didn't show up when I tried to type it in. So what you would do is go over here and grab ASINs and just drag it under there. And then find these guys. Here we are. So they've got some ASINs there, and then what you can do in this case, and this happens a lot, You can either ignore them, but I would rather not. And then just go to individual products, enter list, do not do expanded, do exact, and then just paste those things in there. Easy. Okay. Now, all you have to do is add them. When it comes to sponsor display, you can see I've actually kind of done it in here already. And for this, I've actually refined a little bit by price on purpose, which if you're having trouble getting conversions on a product, it is probably a good idea to, again, narrow the focus of your ads as tightly as you can first, try to get some traction, and then sort of expand from there. In this case, this product is greater than $25, so and brands like, I know that the brand, the big one with a B, whatever it is, I do know that they have a lot of products that are like $15, $19. They get a lot of impressions, and I really don't want to try to compete with that price. I want to try to compete on more similar prices. So basically, I'm refining these categories by price. For product targeting, that is also probably a good idea, but I'm kind of just showing you an example. I may have to go back through that campaign and refine it. The other thing is, when you're doing this type of targeting in display, I prefer using the reach style, so cost per impressions, right? The VCPM. I like doing that because, again, you can get much cheaper cost per clicks, 38 cents, 11 cents, 1 cent. You know, sorry, that's the total spend. The cost per click is much cheaper than that, actually. It doesn't even show up. But anyway, you can see that you can get much cheaper conversions, much cheaper clicks using VCPM, and you can be really aggressive. The more focused you are with the spend, or the focus you are with the targeting, I guess the more aggressive you can be with these bids. So on that note, to add these, it's the same thing. You just search category, and then you just refine the category by brand. And if you did want to refine by price, you would just enter your minimum price here, and then refine by the categories that are not in there. Now, I've gone through this already and dumped a bunch of these categories in there. You can even do this star rating. I generally don't do that when I'm doing this type of targeting. If I'm going to refine by star rating, I actually use the broader category and just focus on the broader category that is reviewed poorly, right? Because usually, there's not that many products in there anyway. So I just kind of opt for that. I just do the broader category that way. I try to avoid similar to advertised product. Obviously, when I'm doing competitor targeting, it is not going to be that fruitful. This is a much better way to do like direct competitor targeting, but it's the same thing. You would just go to the category you're looking for and refine the search. Now, if you remember on the sheet, there was a brand in a different category, luggage and travel gear. So what we want to do is, if it's not showing up here quickly, you can go to search, luggage and travel gear, and that brand was Nonstop, and so we will do Nonstop, and we're in the display campaign, so I do want to do this for display. Display also has a tendency to get a lot of impressions and spend quite a bit of money. So again, I do like to focus that targeting even a little bit more than regular just product targeting. So we'll add it. It is suggesting a $6 bid. I will keep it at $3 for now, just sort of because I don't know how it's going to do yet, and I am not ready to scale these competitor targeting campaigns. But you can see in just the past couple of days of kicking this thing off, it's at a 5.82 ROAS and made a couple sales. So I do really like this for display VCPM, like cost per impression campaigns. For product targeting, it is it's cost per click, so I do want to keep that cost per click fairly low if I can, but I do prefer, again, to do it this way, where I target the brand directly rather than trying to target its ASINs. I only target these ASINs if I can't find the brand, because if you target the brand, right, you will target all the ASINs of that brand instead of just having to put them in one by one, and so then your campaign just doesn't get so filled with ASINs that's hard to manage, right? It's a really hard to manage budget. Now, sometimes I do one campaign per brand for targeting. I don't always do that. I don't have a good reason for not always doing that, except for honestly just workload, right? Like, I know in this case, I'm just trying to start off with competitor targeting, so I don't want to, build 17 campaigns for product targeting. I'll build one, competitor targeting campaign, and then if there's a standout brand, we're doing really well against a brand, I might split that out, or I might split that out into its own campaign, or split other ones out into their own campaigns to let this one sort of like dominate, in the campaign that's already dominating in. Usually though, that's my sort of criteria is where are we at with this product, with this advertising? Is it really developed? Is it not? Because it's sort of just a workload thing. The more campaigns you have, yes, you have more granular control over budget, but in this case, I find it a little bit easier to just put them in one campaign, give sort of a budget to the amount of spend we're willing to allocate to competitor targeting, right, and then manage that. If I'm doing it in a more nuanced way where they each have their own campaign, that is generally because the rest of the account is doing really well, or it's very big already, it's a big brand, and we want to be very, very targeted in how we're approaching competitors. For smaller brands, smaller products, I usually do it this way, because again, it's the only real difference is that you can't manage budget for each brand. Other than that, it's fine, especially if you're only putting in 17 targets, right? If I was putting in all of the ASINs of every one of those targets, right, like that would be, instead of 17 targets, we'd have 200 ASINs in there, and that is a terrible setup for advertising. This is a much cleaner way and easier way to manage advertising on other brands and on competitors. So that's how I would do this. If you do not have Helium 10 or another app or software that can pull that kind of data for you, you don't have to use it. You can just refine and go to the brands and just click away, and that's good too. But as you saw, some of these brands right up at the top were not top sellers. So you might pick a brand, in this top, the ones that show up, the top 10 or 15 or whatever. Some of those brands might not be selling very much. They're not generating a ton of traffic, and that's fine to advertise on them. I just prefer to first seek out the ones pulling in all the impressions, spending all the money on advertising, actually getting all the traffic, right? Because then you have a little bit easier time getting traffic from them. And so that's why I like to go through that initial step of finding out which brands are doing the most volume. Start with those guys. You can obviously do everybody. That's really not the point. It's about sort of probability, I guess. And they have the most traffic, so you have the highest probability of getting traffic. If somebody is getting 100 searches a month, yeah, you might be able to get some of those searches, or if they're getting 100 impressions a month, you might be able to get some of those searches, but not in a very high volume. And in this case, this is kind of a numbers game, so you want more numbers. So anyway, that is how to add competitor targeting. I do it in product targeting, categories, and then sponsored display, preferably the reach style of display, because you just seem to get a lot more impressions, and honestly I've gotten it to be far more profitable than the other style where you pay per click of sponsored display. This has been much better for me. If you wanted to do it with like sponsored brands or sponsored brand video, you can category target and competitor target that way. I generally don't. I haven't found it to be more effective than sort of just generally, targeting with sponsored brands or sponsored brand video. Going directly against competitors with those ad types, to me, for me, has not been very fruitful, or at least not so fruitful that I prioritize it as a strategy. This, though, has been very good, and I do recommend doing it this way. As far as targeting other brands' keywords, that's okay. I think can be a good strategy, but remember, if you're doing that, you're going after a customer that is aware of the brand and searching for that brand. So you are probably going to have to pay a premium to acquire that customer, and that's okay if you have like a consumable product where people repurchase frequently. You do want to pay. It is very additive to your brand to even break even or lose on that initial conversion on a competitor, right? Because you may be earning a lifetime customer, a more valuable customer, than a one-off sale. And these types of products are kind of one-off sales, and so it doesn't make a lot of sense to lose money or be super aggressive, even breaking even, targeting competitor brands, because you might not be getting the recurring value of that customer over the long term. So that's why I don't love prioritizing competitor keywords as a strategy, but this seems to be a good way to do it. So there you go. I hope this was helpful, and start targeting your competitors.